Comic book state of the big two, let's say that. There is a lot of, I'm not going to call it misinformation as they would. It's more of denial. Because anybody can put two and two together and see that, unlike, let's say, with the Japanese, the model with the big two doesn't make any fucking sense. And I've expressed thoroughly why I believe that is the case. In the Japanese case, the anime will sell the manga. The mangas will sell the anime. Such a thing does not happen with the American Big Two. The American Big Two can do a massive blockbuster movie that will make $1 billion, and it will never translate over to sales in mass. Because I do think that there's a big disconnect. They don't understand, like, the audience, the general comic book customer. They don't really understand that. Now, some people that are in denial have done one of two things. One, completely denied that there's a problem here. That's the easy thing. Just say, oh, well, it's not a thing. You know, you have the other aspect, which they then try to take credit for the industry, because comics are far from dead. It's a thriving market, but the big two necessarily, they haven't been the ones to get people enthusiastic about it. They're just taking their ideas elsewhere, right? So as documented right here with the ICV2, you know, they do the whole, the MBD, book scans and all of that. We've referenced a lot of their publishings about sales throughout the months and all that, units that have been pushed. And as this article, this was put out last week, says, COVID in the last 2 years provided unprecedented uncertainty for comic retailers. But 2021 was a record-selling year selling comics for many, and the boom is already continuing into 2022. Phil Boyle at Coliseum of Comics shared some of his comic numbers, nitty-gritty. Boyle compared June to December 2019 to December 2021. Skipping the black hole that was COVID, he says. So this is what he came up with his information with Phil. Overall comic sales were up 46%. And you've heard this number, or not that number, rather this idea that, oh, well, people are buying comics. The comics industry is doing good. Don't listen to these hate tubers and all these people who say that it's in a terrible spot. But then you read more into it and you find out, well, wait a minute. It's not those hacks that work for the big two. They say Image went up 38%. Manga went up 143 fucking percent. Independence went up 172, and Coliseum, or Coliseum, however you want to say it, says that they define independent as basically everything not Image, manga, Marvel, or DC. But here's the good information that is worth noting. DC was down 9%, and Marvel was down 20 fucking percent. And Marvel particularly puts out a lot of fucking books. So it's difficult for them to do that. And this is what Phil said. This tells me people want comics, but they want good comics. Not so much the preachy comics Marvel and DC have been offering. Now, of course, this isn't going to be representative of every single comic book store and every single comic book sale. As right now, you have Mike, for example, with Samurai Comics. He looked at December 2019 to December 2021. He saw a similar increase in manga, and he saw bumps with DC and Marvel. John Robinson, same thing. Graham Cracker's Comics. He says he doesn't count categories the same way, but comparing full years 2019 to 2021, DC's up, Marvel's up. He says I didn't break out manga in 2019, so I can't give the increase there. but we know it was a significant part of the manga growth, or the graphic novel growth, with multiple manga titles making it to our top 50 bestsellers every single month, when for years they wouldn't even place at least 10% of our best sellers are manga. So what does this say? It says that people want comics. It also says that a lot of people are taking credit, particularly that in like the mainstream American comic book culture, let's say that, for shit that is more attributed to manga sales. So they say, well, shows that everything is all well. Now, even Kelly Sue DeConnick's talk about, even as she said, if you don't like her politics, don't buy her books. But she's also talked about how comic books have been in the red, and they have been. You got to understand, like, bottom line, they're not getting much of a return. Now, the benefit that both DC and Marvel has, particularly Marvel, is that they're tied to a mega corporate entity. So they can cut their losses and afford to lose because they can make the money back elsewhere. But the reason why I wanted to show that was because, in my local comic book shop, well, the one that I used to go to, I go there every now and then for like a back issue, but not for nothing recent, just to see whatever they have, because they'll get like a large swap of a bunch of old shit, and I'm like, oh, I'll take that. But it's the same thing. It's like manga's killing it right now, and they don't see that, that increase, that big increase that with the Marvel and DC. So it shows that people are enthusiastic about their work. And I do think that for a lot of people, manga has replaced that and satisfied that itch. I do still think there's something to be said about the American storytelling and the Western kind of form of storytelling. And there's an audience for that. But the shit is so bad. Even with like some of these other, with the images of the Booms or the Dark Horse, their shit is terrible too. Right? They're among the same. They're like basically mainstream light. You know what I mean? It's the same shit. People want this type of material. You know what I mean? And it's thriving, but the big two right now is just surviving based on nostalgia, and that's about it. Not because they're telling good shit, memorable shit or anything. But it should be inspiring. It certainly is for people like me, because it shows that people want this. There's still, despite the demographics and the changes, there's still a lot of people that want this type of material. You just have to give them what they want. And that's just good shit that isn't shoving their fucking political or social views down the fucking throat of their goddamn customers. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.